From the News Channel 5 network, this is Sportsline.
Hey there, Sportsline on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Wednesday night on News Channel 5 Plus. And we got lots that we can dive into tonight. Feels like a lot has gone on this week. You have Eddie George hired as the head football coach at Tennessee State. I don't think anybody saw that coming until the weekend. With everything he has on his plate, he decides to move on from that to take on maybe the biggest challenge of his life at this point, to try to revitalize the TSU football program. I, for one, do not doubt Eddie George when faced with a challenge, but it is going to be a challenge. He has never coached at any level, let alone the college level. He's going to have to put together a staff. He's going to have to deal with the resources and the funding that TSU has struggled to come up with over the last several years. And he's going to try to make that team competitive again. It is a big challenge, but at least through the opening press conference, he was a home run. The excitement and the buzz around the Gentry Center yesterday when they introduced Eddie George, it just felt different. And that's what you need. That is what you need. There are so many people that love Tennessee State University and love that athletic program. But there are definitely challenges, especially from the financial aspect of it. And when you don't see success or you feel like it's not going to change much, it doesn't entice people to give of the money they have. And that is no knock against Rod Reed. Rod Reed is a Tiger through and through. I think he did a really good job as the football coach. And if he had better funding, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. Because when he first took over the job, he had better funding, and he was able to turn around a program that was struggling and get it to the place where they went to the FCS, football playoffs for the first time in 30 years, and they won a game for the first time in 30 years. That was in 2013. Rod Reed did that. He turned the football program around to get to that point. But almost from that point on, the funding has been more and more difficult at TSU, and they have struggled to get guys into summer school, just to be on campus in summer school, to be able to fund that. And that's where you get so much of the strength and conditioning work and all those things that are important to your season done. TSU's been unable to do that. They've slashed the recruiting budget for coaches. That's a problem. And up until this past year, they weren't even at the full allocation of scholarships allowed in the FCS. That's a problem if you're trying to compete at that level. And that, to me, is why, after going up, the Rod Reed TSU football program trajectory went down. It's just difficult to compete at that level. And I don't know if there's anyone to blame at TSU for that. I don't think it was a conscious choice, man, we're going to underfund certain things. I just don't think there were the funds. And so then you have to pick and choose what battles you're going to fight. And it just wasn't enough to go up against the teams in the OVC and certainly the elite levels of the FCS. And that is what the hope can be from yesterday, is that Eddie George and the buzz that comes from having one of the most famous Nashvillians and Tennesseans, a guy who's been around for 25 years since coming here to play with the Oilers and then the Titans, the all-time leading rusher in franchise history, a Tennessee Sports Hall of Famer, a really popular guy that's been successful in a lot of his endeavors. All of those sort of things make him beloved, make him a guy you want to follow and a guy that you want to root for. And the buzz that was around that building yesterday makes me think that there is a possibility that TSU can really jumpstart things. And they think so too, by the way, because they started a capital fundraising campaign for athletics right after the press conference yesterday. So if you believe in Eddie George or in TSU, now's the time to give. That's what they're saying. And I think a lot of people will follow through on that. I think TSU fans who maybe for the longest time thought, I don't know, I don't have a ton of money to give, but I'm not sure if I give it, how it will be spent, or if it will be spent to a level that will allow us to be competitive in the way I want us to be. Maybe that scared some of those people away, and now maybe they'll feel differently about the commitment because Eddie George is there. And I think you're also going to find some people, maybe not even in Tennessee and in Nashville, just people who think that Eddie George is incredible. People we met from Broadway, people from Ohio State where he won a Heisman Trophy. We saw the Cowboys send out a tweet yesterday congratulating. He played a season there. Maybe some people from the Dallas area will reach out in this regard. But one thing's for sure, when Jackson State hired Deion Sanders a little over a year ago to be their football coach, the donations came pouring into that program. They raised millions of dollars off of the hire of Deion Sanders. And that is what TSU is hoping it can do off of Eddie George. He's going to have to learn on the job in terms of the game management part of being a head coach. He's also going to have to get a really good staff to help him teach and put in his systems and all those sort of things, because he's never done that before. But in terms of being a leader and somebody that you can rally the troops around, whether that be the players, the alumni base, or the community, it is hard to imagine anybody out there that is better suited for that than Eddie George. And I think we saw that yesterday. Another coaching hire officially announced today, or the official introduction today at Vanderbilt, of Shea Ralph, the new women's basketball coach who replaces Stephanie White. Ralph comes from UConn, where she was Gino Auriemma's top assistant. Get this, she takes over a Vanderbilt program that has really struggled in recent years to get to where it needs to be, to get to the NCAA tournament. Shea Ralph's a winner. She won a national championship as a player at UConn in 2000. She's won 6 more as an assistant under Gino Auriemma. She believes that she can come in and help the program win. And here's the thing, when you look at Ralph, she sat there from UConn, where she was winning a ton. And that confidence, you can tell just by her demeanor of what she thinks is possible, because I don't know if there's a lot of people around the country who've looked at Vanderbilt women's basketball over the last 6 or 7 years, certainly in the time that Stephanie White was the head coach and struggled so mightily, and thought, man, that's a sleeping giant of a program. Why is it not doing better? And Shea Ralph was sitting there at UConn, going to Final Four after Final Four and cutting down the nets as a national champion, and looking at Vanderbilt thinking, that program should be better than it is. I don't know why it's not better in the SEC. I don't know why it's not a women's basketball power. And so while it was difficult to leave one of the best programs in the country, she said it was a no-brainer to her to come to Nashville and take on the Vanderbilt job. And so now it's up to her to look into the program and figure out why it hasn't been a power, and get down to work on turning it around. But I think you look at these two hires very impressively within the city. I don't think TSU could have hired anyone that would have had more buzz around the hire than Eddie George. And from Vanderbilt, talk about hiring a rising star in Shea Ralph. I think that's exactly what they did. So we'll see how those move on. Jadeveon Clowney signs today in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns. 1-year deal worth up to $10 million. Cleveland obviously hoping to get more out of Clowney than the Titans got, which was 8 total games and 0 sacks last year. I have nothing against Jadeveon Clowney. He got hurt. He was never healthy here. I don't think what you saw last year was who Jadeveon Clowney is. But he certainly didn't do much in his time. He definitely didn't live up to the salary he got from the Titans when he signed. And now he bolts to go to Cleveland, and we'll see how he does up there. I would not be paying up to $10 million for Jadeveon Clowney this year. I just wouldn't. I don't know how healthy he is. I don't know what kind of production you're going to get. But they're banking on him being opposite Myles Garrett and that freeing him up and helping to free up Garrett and those two guys having a monster year. That's what they're banking on at that salary. And we'll just see how it plays itself out. And then how about the Nashville Predators? A month ago, or almost a month ago, on March 15th, the Predators were 10 points out of the final playoff spot. Since that time, they've won 13 of 16 games. That's second best in the NHL over that span, behind only the league-leading Avalanche, the team that's probably going to win the President's Trophy this year. And last night, an emphatic statement with a 7-2 drubbing of the reigning Stanley Cup champion Lightning. Roman Josi and Victor Arvidsson both had 3 points. Young Tanner Jeannot steps in and gets his first career goal. Rem Pitlick with his first couple of points, both assists in the game. This is a team that is plugging guys in, as beat up as it's been, and they believe right now. As undermanned as they've been, they believe, because they have a goaltender in UC Saros that is playing lights out. And they're completely bought into the John Hines system and the way they're going to play. They understand the aggressiveness they have to play with and the discipline they have to play with. And they're playing with it. And they're plugging in guys when they need to. This guy goes out with an injury, well, we'll pull up somebody from the taxi squad. Or we'll pull up somebody from Chicago, which is where the minor league program is this year. And we'll put that guy in, and he's just going to run the same system. I think you have to give a lot of credit to John Hines for hanging with it when it looked like this team was a total mess back in January and February and into March. And you also have to give a lot of credit to the players for staying with it. Because there was no one, even into mid-March, that thought this team had any chance to make the playoffs. And after last night, they are 4 points up on that final playoff spot with a dozen games to go. And the other thing about last night, when you look at the Predators, last night was an important step for this team. Because while they've made this run over the last month, a lot of those games came against the teams at the bottom half of the Central. They beat up on Chicago, which is good because they're the team 4 points back, closest to you. They won a couple games against Dallas, which is good because they've got some games in hand and they're just behind that. And they also beat up on the Red Wings, who are by far the worst team in the division and one of the worst teams in all of the NHL. But going into last night, the Predators had played 17 games this season against the top 3 teams in the division, which right now in order is Carolina, Tampa Bay, only just a game played back, same points as Carolina, and then Florida, which is just 2 points back of them. So those 3 teams have been great all season long. And in those 17 games that the Predators had played against them, they'd only managed to win 3. That's it. And so as they were winning all these games, there were some questions. Okay, maybe the Predators can find their way into the playoffs. But do they have any chance to actually compete against these teams at the top of the division who have been good from the start this year? And I think there was real doubt about that. Even Saturday night, the Predators played pretty well in the first game against the Lightning and lost 3-0. They got some chances, but they couldn't crack it against Andrei Vasilevsky. And the Lightning, with their quick strike ability, able to get a couple goals, get an empty netter late, they win 3-0. It was fair to ask those questions. Even David Poile, the general manager, at the trade deadline on Monday said, look, this team has earned the right to stay together and finish this season out because they look like they're a playoff team the way they're playing right now. But even I can't sit here and say that we're a likely Stanley Cup contender because we've got to prove more down the stretch of the season. First, we've got to make the playoffs. But 2, we also have to prove that we can compete against these teams at the top of the division. Well, last night, the Predators looked like a team that compete against the top of the division. It was a balanced effort. It was a physical effort. The forecheck was outstanding. Saros was amazing. And they capitalized when they needed to. Scored when they needed to. Last night, the Predators, I think, made some believers out of even the biggest skeptics of this run. But they've got to keep it going because now they play the team I think is the most difficult matchup within the Central for them. They go to Carolina tomorrow night and Saturday night. That is up to them to go win one of those games. Again, they got the 4-point cushion. Chicago's going to Detroit this weekend. Totally possible that Chicago walks away with 4 points in that stretch. And then next week, those two teams, Nashville and Chicago, play 3 times. The Preds have fared well against Chicago throughout the course of the season so far, but those 3 games next week are going to go a long way to determining who ultimately wins this 4th position in the Central. But you know what would certainly help the Preds? Is go get some points in Carolina over the next couple of games. And again, I think this is the worst matchup, at least at the start of the year, for the Preds in the division. So you really want to figure out how far this team has come? How do they perform on the road in Carolina in the next couple of games? Last night was a major statement against the reigning Stanley Cup champs. It may be even a bigger statement if they can get some results against the Hurricanes. Phone lines are open tonight. 737-7767 is the number. We would love to hear from you. We can talk about any of the coaching hires, Eddie George, Shea Ralph. We can talk some Titans getting set for the draft, or Jadeveon Clowney taking off for Cleveland. We can talk the Predators and this terrific run that they're on. 737-7767, the number. But when we come back, I want to dive into something about sports and something that we're all dealing with in the country right now. And there were big stories yesterday about vaccines in the country and what's going on there and how they should be handled. And meanwhile, below the radar, there were several stories dealing with COVID and dealing with the vaccines within the NFL. And I'm not sure how many people caught them. So I want to get into those, and I want to get your thoughts on them when we come back. 737-7767. This is Sportsline on News Channel 5+.